Have you ever been so underestimated that your silence turned into a revolution? Imagine walking into the very place you built with your own hands, only to be told you didn't belong. Imagine being asked to leave your own hotel, not because of what you said, but because of how you looked. This is the story of Dr. Maya Ellison, a black woman, a founder, a visionary, who was publicly dismissed, humiliated, and nearly thrown out of the five-star hotel chain she created. But instead of shouting back, she made a quiet call. 12 seconds later, the building shook. 47 floors up, a new chapter in hospitality history began. What followed wasn't just a power shift, it was a cultural reckoning, a viral moment, a new industry standard. And at the center of it all, one woman, one coat, and one unshakable belief: respect should never depend on recognition. This isn't just a story about bias, it's about transformation. It's about what happens when a system built on assumptions is finally forced to see the truth. Stay with us until the end, because the moment you think you know where this story is going is exactly when everything changes. Tuesday, 2:47 p.m., the Halcyon Regent's marble lobby shimmered beneath a vast chandelier, casting gold-flecked reflections across polished stone. Outside, the heart of downtown moved in its usual rhythm, unaware that inside, something extraordinary was about to unfold. She walked in without fanfare. Dr. Maya Ellison, Harvard alumna, founder of the Ellison Group, and controlling shareholder of the Halcyon chain, stepped through the revolving glass doors like any other guest, her navy-tailored coat swaying softly behind her. Her expression was serene, unreadable, and her gait radiated quiet authority honed through boardroom battles and diplomatic summits. Yet, to Logan Myers, the newly promoted guest services manager, she was just another woman who didn't look like she belonged. Young, polished, and painfully unaware, Logan glanced up from his sleek marble reception desk, took in her caramel-toned skin and modest elegance, and decided on the spot that this woman must be lost. "Ma'am, we don't allow solicitors inside the lobby," he said flatly, as if rehearsed. Maya paused, head tilting slightly, her gaze meeting his with the same calm curiosity she once used to silence Fortune 500 executives. "Excuse me?" she asked, voice smooth, precise. "Do you have a reservation?" Logan continued, tone clipped. "We're fully booked today. If you're here to inquire about a job application, please use the service entrance." Two security guards nearby glanced over. Their posture shifted. Her presence alone had unsettled the unspoken code of the lobby, a space designed to whisper exclusivity. Guests in business suits looked up. One woman lowered her phone mid-conversation. In the far corner, a lifestyle vlogger named Kendra Scott, known online for her hotel review series, blinked and instinctively lifted her camera. Something about the tone in Logan's voice, entitled, dismissive, cutting, triggered her instincts. "This could go viral," she whispered to herself. Maya stepped forward, unbothered by the stares or the guard's sudden alertness. "I'm here on official business," she said simply, placing a slim leather briefcase on the counter. Logan gave a dry laugh. "And what business would that be?" Before she could respond, he waved toward the guards. "Please escort this woman outside. We don't have time for games today." Maya didn't flinch. Instead, she reached slowly into her handbag, pulled out a black card. No logo, no name, just the unmistakable gleam of status, then tucked it back in, almost teasingly. Logan didn't see it, but Kendra's camera did. "You really shouldn't assume," Maya said, still composed. "Assume what?" Logan scoffed. "That someone who walks in without announcing themselves deserves special treatment? Look, I've been managing five-star properties for over a year now. I know how to spot trouble." The irony danced in the air like static. Behind Maya, the room's energy shifted. A receptionist stiffened. The bellhop at the door subtly lowered his sunglasses, watching more carefully now. Guests who were passing through began slowing, sensing a confrontation. The tension was quiet, but palpable. Kendra was already live streaming. "We're live from the Halcyon," she narrated to her growing online audience, "where a black woman just got asked to leave before saying a single thing." Logan's voice rose slightly. "I'm asking nicely now. Please exit the premises." Maya, unbothered, pulled out her phone. Not hurried, not defensive, just measured. She dialed. The screen reflected briefly in Kendra's camera. "Nathan Cole, HQ, 1 ring." Then, "Nathan, this is Maya, code 9, the Halcyon Regent, downtown." She ended the call without explanation. Logan stared at her, confused. Who was that? Your attorney? Maya didn't respond. She just looked at the time. 2:48 p.m. 3 minutes, she murmured. Logan's jaw tightened. 3 minutes until what? You summon a protest group? The guards hesitated now. Something about her presence no longer felt ordinary. The receptionist leaned toward the internal phone line, but didn't make a call. From the mezzanine above, a staff member froze halfway down the stairs, eyes locked on Maya. The ripple had begun. But Logan, emboldened by ignorance, pressed on. We don't tolerate disruptions. You have no appointment, no ID, and no business card. That's all I need to know. Maya smiled softly, a smile that meant, you've just sealed your fate. She stepped back, centered in the lobby, facing the massive Halcyon emblem mounted behind the reception desk. A logo she designed. One board meeting ago, $1 billion deal ago. Around her, the lobby hummed with hushed conversations, camera clicks, and digital notifications. Kendra's viewer count had just surged past 7,000. Outside, traffic continued as usual. Inside, an earthquake was rumbling beneath the marble floor, one that Logan Myers had just triggered with a single sentence. You don't belong here. And Maya? She was just getting started. By 2:49 p.m., the Halcyon Regent's grand lobby had become more than a destination for luxury travelers. It was now a stage, and the world was watching. Kendra Scott's live stream surged from 7,000 viewers to nearly 13,000 within 90 seconds, her voice steady but astonished as she narrated. This is Kendra, live from the Halcyon downtown, and you're witnessing it in real time. A woman of color being publicly dismissed at a luxury hotel she hasn't even had a chance to check into. Her audience flooded the comments with shock, disbelief, and rage. Racial profiling in 2025, someone wrote. Is this real? She hasn't done anything, echoed another. Across the lobby, Maya Ellison stood still as a sculpture, her posture relaxed, her gaze fixed on nothing in particular. She wasn't responding to Logan Myers anymore. She wasn't even looking at him. Her eyes were tracking something else entirely. Timing, angles, witnesses. Every movement in the room was absorbed by her without effort. The way one guest stood up mid-lot to record on her phone. The way the concierge, half hidden behind a gold-accented column, whispered into a walkie-talkie. The way Alicia Tron, the assistant guest services manager, had just entered from the side hallway, drawn by the rising tension like metal to magnet. What's going on here? Alicia asked, her eyes bouncing from Logan's red face to Maya's controlled silence. This woman claims she has business with us, Logan replied quickly, his voice a notch louder than necessary. She just walked in and started acting like she owns the place. The irony of that sentence would soon be historical. Alicia's gaze narrowed. Something didn't feel right. The woman in front of her was wearing a coat tailored with quiet luxury, and her posture didn't scream arrogance. It whispered control. She carried herself like someone who didn't need to speak loudly to be heard. Alicia hesitated. May I see your... That won't be necessary, Maya interrupted gently. Alicia faltered. Sorry? You don't need to verify anything, Maya continued. In 60 seconds, everything will become clear. Logan scoffed audibly. You're still on that countdown? He turned toward the guards. What are you waiting for? Escort her out. But the guards had frozen. Rodriguez, the senior of the two, had been working in hotel security for nearly 20 years. He knew trouble. He could smell it. And he knew this wasn't it. The woman hadn't raised her voice. Hadn't made a single threat. Hadn't even requested anything out of line. If anything, she had exercised more restraint than most high-paying guests he'd encountered. Still, Logan was his superior. Rodriguez shifted his weight uncomfortably but didn't move forward. Sir, he said carefully, she's just standing here, not resisting, not yelling. Maybe we de-escalate. Logan glared at him. You think this is a debate? But the guard didn't reply. Neither did his colleague. Silence rolled over the lobby like a storm cloud. On the mezzanine level, more staff had begun to gather. A bartender leaned against the railing, phone in hand. The pianist had stopped mid-chord. The usual flow of activity had stalled, sucked into the gravitational pull of one woman's presence. Maya didn't speak, but she reached into her purse again. Kendra zoomed in. This time it was a phone. Matte black, monogrammed initials. Me. She tapped a name that no one else could see. and as the line connected for just 2 rings, Logan's confidence faltered ever so slightly. "She's bluffing," he muttered, "probably calling some friend to play dress-up rescue." Maya ended the call after precisely 12 seconds. No words, just one clear signal. Then she looked up at the massive hotel clock. 2:50 p.m. "1 minute left," she said softly. Logan laughed nervously, loud and unconvincing. "Who exactly do you think you are?" Kendra's live stream hit 18,000 viewers. Her voice trembled as she narrated. "This is no longer just a confrontation. This feels like something calculated." On screen, viewers began to speculate. Some recognized the card Maya had flashed earlier. Others noted the Cartier watch, the flawless posture, the measured confidence. "She's definitely someone," a comment read. "They're making a mistake. If she owns the hotel, I'm throwing my phone," another wrote. Upstairs in the executive suite of the hotel, an emergency alert had pinged across the internal system. Code 9, initiated by ME confirmed. Nathan Cole, CEO of Halcyon International, stared at the message in disbelief. Then he ran. Not walked, not called ahead, not delegated. He ran through hallways, downstairs, tie flapping behind him like a white flag. Because when Maya Ellison issued a Code 9, you moved. And if you didn't, you weren't in leadership much longer. Back in the lobby, Logan was mid-sentence. "You're going to regret making a scene here." When the glass entrance doors parted with a gust of wind, Nathan Cole stormed through, suit askew, eyes scanning the crowd until he locked on to the still, silent figure at the lobby's center. "Dr. Ellison," he said, breathless, "I am so incredibly sorry." The room froze, dead still. Maya turned slightly. "Thank you, Nathan," she said with calm grace. Logan's entire face changed, drained, confused, then horrified. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Alicia staggered back a step. Rodriguez looked away, ashamed. Kendra Scott's livestream cracked the 25,000 viewer mark. Her voice was nearly a whisper. "Oh my God! They just tried to remove the owner of the hotel from her own lobby." Maya didn't raise her voice, didn't point, didn't gloat. She merely turned toward the elevators and said, "Let's go upstairs. The board is waiting." Logan remained frozen, a man watching his future dissolve beneath him in real time. He couldn't move, couldn't process, couldn't breathe properly. The woman he'd dismissed, disrespected, and disregarded was not only his superior, she was his employer's employer. She was the reason this marble even existed beneath his feet, and she had just reminded the world that assumption is the enemy of truth. The elevator chimed as Maya entered, still composed, still silent. As the doors began to close behind her, Kendra's livestream caught one final glimpse, a woman rising above insult, stepping towards something far greater than revenge, systemic transformation. And the internet? It had only just begun to listen. 2:51 p.m., somewhere between the stunned silence of the lobby and the breathless tension hanging above it, a seismic shift had already occurred. One that none of the guests, nor even Logan Myers, had the tools to measure yet. But Dr. Maya Ellison had. She'd engineered moments like this before, not in lobbies, but in boardrooms, policy sessions, and billion-dollar negotiations, where silence wasn't a surrender, but a setup. And now, her latest maneuver had been set in motion, with nothing more than a 12-second phone call. Logan still didn't know what Code 9 inches meant, but the way Nathan Cole had reacted, bolting through the hotel entrance, panting, apologizing in full view of staff and patrons, said everything. He stood frozen behind the reception desk, the lobby feeling colder, his crisp white shirt suddenly damp beneath his arms. Maya didn't glance back at him, didn't speak another word to him. Her presence alone, elegant and unyielding, continued to unravel the performance of superiority Logan had clung to moments earlier. And above it all, Kendra Scott's livestream hit 34,000 viewers. Her voice, slightly trembling with the weight of what she was documenting, narrated the unfolding scene as if the world were reading it page by page with her. "This is something I've never seen," she whispered. "A CEO, no, the founder, was just mistaken for a trespasser in her own hotel." Rodriguez, the senior security officer, shifted from one foot to the other. He'd followed the protocol for years, followed orders from the front desk, escorted guests out when they caused a scene. But this wasn't protocol. This was a warning etched into every marble tile. That silence in the face of bias is complicity. Alicia Tran had followed the group into the elevator, her hands gripping the tablet she carried like a shield. Her mind raced through every moment she had stood beside Logan, nodding in agreement, backing up his judgments without question. Her stomach twisted now, not from fear of being punished, but from the sudden clarity of what she'd enabled. Inside the elevator, Maya stood at the center, unmoved, composed, as if the marble and gold had been arranged to accommodate her presence, not the other way around. Nathan stood to her left, still trying to collect his breath and dignity. Logan to her right, eyes glued to the floor numbers climbing. The silence was more punishing than any lecture. 12th floor, 18th, 26th. With each ding of ascent, Logan felt another layer of himself peeling away. His pride, his assumptions, his belief in his own judgment. At floor 30, he whispered, "Dr. Ellison, if I had known." "Would it have mattered?" she asked, not cruelly, but as if posing a question to a student who had misunderstood the entire chapter. Logan swallowed hard. The implication settled like smoke in the chamber. That's when the elevator lights flickered, not a power outage, but a system override. The Halcyon's internal network had just activated an emergency alert, a live Code 9 confirmation, visible only to executives. In the command center 2 floors down, the security hub lit up with notifications. ME confirmed, incident underway, executive-level engagement required. Elsewhere in the hotel, notifications buzzed discreetly on smartwatches and staff comms. A handful of senior managers paused, confused. A Code 9 had never actually been used. It was a contingency designed by the founder herself, a final lever of power meant to signal not panic, but evaluation. Not danger, but accountability. The elevator passed floor 38. Logan's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to disrespect you." Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to. The silence answered better than any reprimand. Nathan finally spoke, his voice low, reverent. "We have a plan for moments like this, but frankly, I never imagined you'd need to use it." Maya's eyes didn't waver. "That's why I built it." 41st floor. Alicia spoke up suddenly, her voice tight. "Dr. Ellison, I didn't know who you were, but I should have stopped it. I should have—" Maya raised a hand gently. "Your role will be addressed. This isn't the moment for explanations." The words weren't cruel, they were surgical. 44th floor. The hotel's operations floor. Through a small window, they could see several department heads waiting, watching the numbers rise on the executive panel. 46th. Logan pressed a palm to the glass panel. His knees trembled. And then, 47th floor. The chime was delicate, but it landed like thunder. The doors opened to reveal the boardroom floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the skyline, sunlight bouncing off polished wood, fine art, and frosted glass bearing the Halcyon crest. Waiting outside the main conference room were 3 board members, visibly surprised by the sudden presence of the company founder and the disheveled CEO at her side. "Dr. Ellison," one of them muttered, "we weren't informed." "You are now," she replied, striding forward with unshaken grace. Her heels tapped across the polished floor, like a metronome counting down the end of an era. Behind her, Nathan trailed like a man escorting royalty through a battlefield. Logan stumbled after them, face ashen, Alicia close behind, eyes down. Kendra Scott's live stream, still active from the lobby, thanks to a staff member recording the elevator monitor screen, hit 42,000 viewers. Chat windows blurred. Headlines were already being crafted in comment threads. "She made the hotel. They tried to remove her." Racism at the Regent? Black founder enforces Code 9? What happens next will shock you. But up here, in the sanctum of executive decision-making, Maya Ellison wasn't thinking about headlines. She was thinking about systems. She was thinking about rot in the foundation. She was thinking about reform. She stepped to the boardroom doors. They swung open with a hiss. The future of the Halcyon Regent was already waiting. And so was her justice. 2:58 p.m. The air on the 47th floor was crisper, quieter, yet beneath that polished surface, it pulsed with something volatile. In the executive boardroom of the Halcyon Regent, 12 senior members were seated around a mahogany table, reviewing quarterly occupancy rates and projected earnings. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until the doors opened and Dr. Maya Ellison walked in. For a full second, no one moved. Then, silence fractured. One board member, Robert Lynn, in charge of East Coast development, blinked twice and stood abruptly. Dr. Ellison, we weren't expecting. That's the point, Maya said smoothly, setting her briefcase on the center console. You weren't expecting this, and that's exactly why it needs to happen. Behind her, Nathan Cole remained near the door, still visibly shaken. Logan Myers followed like a man walking into sentencing, the luster of his fresh-pressed shirt now damp with shame. Alicia entered quietly, not speaking, her eyes darting only between Maya and the screen. Maya didn't sit. Instead, she opened her briefcase, pulled out a sleek black tablet, and connected it to the presentation monitor with practiced precision. Within seconds, the live stream from the lobby, Kendra Scott's recording, filled the central screen. The room gasped. The first frames showed Logan, arrogant and dismissive, gesturing to security. Then Maya, standing calmly as phones were raised. Then Logan again. People like you walk in here all the time, pretending to be someone they're not. The words hit like glass shattering on marble. People like you. The room was frozen. Board member Serena Hale, a diversity strategist from the Chicago branch, leaned forward slowly, her face pale. Is this live? It was, Maya answered. 12 minutes ago, when your floor managers attempted to remove me from the hotel I founded. No one breathed. This footage has already been viewed over 50,000 times across 3 platforms, Maya continued. It is trending on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter under the tags #Ellison Thalcyon and #SheOwnsTheHotel. One board member cursed under his breath. Another looked to the door as if searching for an escape. Logan, Serena finally asked, her voice a whisper. Did you know who she was? Logan opened his mouth, then closed it, then tried again. I didn't recognize her. She didn't give me her name. He never asked, Maya interjected, her tone scalpel sharp. He assumed, as did your assistant manager, as did your front desk policies. That's the cancer we're treating today. The presentation advanced to screenshots of Maya's card, barely glimpsed by Kendra's camera, of Logan standing behind the desk, smirking, of Nathan bursting through the front doors with sweat lining his collar. The image of Maya in the center of the lobby, still and poised amid chaos, anchored them all. Nathan finally spoke. We are facing a cultural failure at the highest level of guest experience. This was not a single mistake. It was the predictable outcome of unaddressed bias. Bias? Logan blurted too fast. I didn't do anything racist. I was following protocol. Protocol, Maya repeated, turning to him with a chilling calm, isn't an excuse for dehumanizing your guests or your leadership. She tapped again. The next slide displayed a snapshot from the internal Halcyon staff portal. Under Executive Summary, the name appeared in bold, Dr. Maya Ellison, founder and chairwoman, 71% controlling interest, Halcyon International. The number alone silenced the room. I own this hotel, she said simply. I built it from the ground up. I designed the service model. I personally selected the marble you stood on when you told me I didn't belong. The last sentence landed like thunder. Logan's legs buckled slightly. He leaned against the wall. Alicia shut her eyes. I'm not here to destroy careers, Maya continued, but I am here to ensure we stop destroying our credibility, our values, and our integrity. Serena looked to the others. She's right. This is systemic. If it can happen to her, imagine what happens to guests we don't recognize. It's already happened, Maya said, voice even. But this time, it was recorded. This time, it's not being buried under HR memos and quiet settlements. So, what do we do? Another board member asked, voice tentative. We start with accountability, Maya replied, locking eyes with Logan. Mr. Myers, you will resign immediately. You'll be given standard severance, but your position is terminated as of this moment. Logan's face crumpled. He didn't argue. He didn't have to. The evidence was playing in loop behind her like a courtroom exhibit. Miss Tran, Maya continued, turning to Alicia, your instinct was delayed, but your reflection appears genuine. You will undergo mandatory retraining, and your role will be placed under probationary review. Alicia nodded wordlessly. Maya turned back to the board. I'm implementing a comprehensive reform structure. You'll receive the documents within the hour. This includes mandatory anti-bias training, anonymous guest experience audits, and real-time flagging technology for discriminatory behavior. It will be called, she paused, then stated with clarity, the Ellison Protocol. At the table's end, a communications executive raised her hand slowly. We're already getting press inquiries. CNBC, MSNBC, BuzzFeed. The headlines out there. Black founder mistaken for guest, escorted out of her own hotel. Then let that be the last headline of its kind, Maya said, closing her briefcase. What comes next is the real story. Outside, the sky over the city remained unchanged, bright, polished, quiet. But inside the halcyon regent, everything had shifted. The founder had returned, and she wasn't leaving quietly. 3:11 p.m. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft hiss, sealing 4 people inside a mirrored capsule of tension and silence. As it began its descent from the 47th floor, the air felt thinner, as if the walls themselves were reluctant to descend back into the world where everything had changed. Dr. Maya Ellison stood perfectly composed at the center, her reflection duplicated on all sides. Nathan Cole, still flushed from the conference room fallout, stood behind her like a silent shadow. Alicia Tran kept her eyes low, fingers trembling as they clutched her digital tablet. And then there was Logan Myers, his back pressed to the corner, shoulders hunched, breathing shallow, a man mid-collapse, trying to remember what dignity used to feel like. No one spoke for the first 10 floors. Only the soft chime of each passing level filled the space. Maya watched the numbers like a metronome of justice. 44, 43, 42. Logan shifted his weight, cleared his throat. Then, almost inaudibly, "Dr. Ellison, I didn't mean to offend you. If I had known..." Maya's voice was calm, deliberate, each syllable a surgical incision. "If you had known who I was, would you have treated me differently?" Logan blinked, caught between yes and no, between cowardice and confession. Of course," he said, then immediately regretted it. Maya turned slightly to face him. "So you only treat people with respect when they have power?" The words were not an accusation. They were a mirror, a precise reflection of everything he had demonstrated in that lobby. Logan tried again. I didn't realize. I thought, you assumed," she cut in gently but firmly, "based on my appearance, based on the way I walked in without an entourage or announcement. You assumed I didn't belong." Floor 38. The silence was now painful. Maya continued. "Do you know how often someone who looks like me is told they don't belong in spaces they've built, in rooms they fund, on floors they paid to design?" Logan swallowed hard. "I wasn't thinking about race, I swear. It's not that." "It is that," Maya replied. "The fact that you didn't think about it is the problem. Unconscious bias is still bias. Your silence wasn't neutrality. It was erasure." Alicia shifted slightly, shame coloring her cheeks. Logan's mouth moved, but nothing came out. He looked to Nathan for rescue. Nathan said nothing. Floor 31. Maya took a slow breath. "There's a difference, Mr. Myers, between security and superiority. One protects the integrity of a place. The other protects ego. You weren't guarding the hotel. You were guarding your assumption of who is worthy to be in it." Logan's hands clenched at his sides. "I've made mistakes, I know that. But I've worked hard to get here. So have I," Maya replied. "But you assumed otherwise. Because I didn't look like your idea of success. Because I didn't present credentials before being seen as human." Floor 27. The numbers counted down. Logan was no longer looking at her. He was staring at the floor, jaw tight, shame pressed into every nerve ending. I'm sorry," he muttered, "truly." Maya's gaze didn't soften, but it didn't harden either. It held. "I don't need your apology. I need your awakening." Her voice echoed in the small chamber, timeless. Nathan, silent until now, finally spoke. "I don't think any of us truly understood what these moments look like until we saw it through your eyes." Maya didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her presence was the answer. Floor 21, Alicia cleared her throat quietly. "Dr. Ellison, may I ask something?" Maya nodded. "Why did you come without an entourage, without anyone announcing you? You knew they wouldn't recognize you." Maya smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just truthfully. "Because I shouldn't have to be recognized to be respected." The elevator continued its descent. Kendra Scott's live stream had ended, but the clip now circulated across platforms with subtitles, edits, commentary. Major media outlets had already picked up the story. Tweets ranged from outrage to admiration. One headline read, "She built the palace, they threw her out the front door." Floor 12, Maya spoke once more. "This protocol wasn't created for me. It was created for the next young woman of color who walks into one of our hotels and gets dismissed before she can speak. It was created for your next guest who gets judged by their accent or their shoes or their silence. Logan looked up, eyes glassy. I want to do better. Then start by listening, she said. Not to defend, but to understand. Listen when people tell you the systems you benefit from are hurting them. Listen when silence feels like violence. Listen when someone tells you they don't feel welcome in a place meant for everyone. Floor 6, the final stretch. Alicia exhaled slowly. I'll listen, she said. I'll do the work. Maya gave a slight nod. That's the first step. The work never ends. Floor 1. The chime rang. The doors opened, and the lobby, still glimmering beneath the chandelier, still humming with whispers and wide eyes, looked exactly as it had before. But now, everyone inside knew. Nothing was the same. As Maya stepped out of the elevator, the crowd instinctively parted. Phones rose again, not in aggression, but in reverence. A woman had descended from the top floor, not just to punish, but to teach. Not just to call out, but to call forward. Logan followed, slower now, humbled. Alicia stepped into the light beside them, still processing, and Nathan Cole, head bowed slightly, said only 6 words. Let the reform begin right now. The marble didn't shine differently. The chandelier didn't flicker, but a reckoning had passed through the halcyon, and everyone knew it. The founder had come home, not to reclaim her place, but to remind them why it existed in the first place. 3:17 p.m. The boardroom lights dimmed automatically as the projector resumed. No longer was this just an internal matter. It had become a national moment, a public spectacle of assumption and justice colliding in real time. A media relations officer stormed into the room, her tablet screen ablaze with alerts. We have full-scale media activation, she announced breathlessly. NBC, CNN, Vox, even international outlets. Sky News, Al Jazeera, they're already running the story. The phrase "she owns the hotel" is the #1 trending tag on X and TikTok. One board member groaned into his hands, another simply whispered, God. But Maya Ellison was unmoved. She sat now, finally taking her seat at the head of the polished mahogany table, her posture royal, her tone poised. Good, she said simply. Let it trend. She pressed a button on the tablet in front of her. The screen shifted from media headlines to an organized, meticulously prepared presentation slide titled, The Ellison Protocol. Dismantling bias in hospitality from the inside out. This isn't a PR disaster, Maya continued, unless we try to cover it up. Then it becomes cowardice. But if we face it, if we lead with truth and reform, it becomes a case study in transformation. Her words struck the table like a tuning fork. Nathan Cole sat to her right, now fully composed, the panic replaced by focused intent. She's right, he said to the room. What happened in our lobby is inexcusable, but it's also a gift, because the world is watching how we respond. Maya clicked again. A new slide populated the screen. 3 phases of protocol activation. Each step had been prepared in advance. Months ago, even before she had decided to walk into the hotel unannounced. Phase 1, mandatory unconscious bias training for all customer-facing employees to begin within 10 days. Phase 2, anonymous guest experience audits at random branches reviewed quarterly by a third-party oversight firm. Phase 3, real-time incident flagging AI installed in every branch, trained to detect tone, phrase patterns, and escalation triggers during guest interactions. The room buzzed. Serena Hale, always the first to ask the hard questions, raised an eyebrow. And the cost? Initial implementation is estimated at $4.7 million, Maya answered, switching to the financial breakdown. Annual upkeep, $2.1 million, compared to the estimated $15 million in brand erosion and potential lawsuits if we fail to act. She let the silence do the math. How do we staff this? Another executive asked. Where does oversight live? Maya smiled slightly. We already have a diversity officer, but she's been underused. I propose we expand her role, create a dedicated bias prevention division, reporting directly to the executive board. She glanced at Alicia Tron. If she's willing to rebuild trust, I'd like her to serve as interim lead under probation. Alicia blinked, visibly stunned, then nodded slowly. Yes, Dr. Ellison. I want to do this. I need to. Another board member looked skeptical. And how do we communicate this externally? Right now, the internet believes we're the villains in a racial profiling scandal. Maya clicked to the next slide. PR strategy. Own the narrative. We go public, she said. Not to excuse, not to spin, but to take responsibility. Full transparency. What happened, why it happened, and what we're doing to make sure it never happens again. We announce the Ellison protocol tomorrow morning with a press conference streamed live, and we invite the community to hold us accountable. Serena leaned back in her chair, processing. That's bold. So is trying to remove the woman who built this brand from her own lobby, Maya said flatly. The media officer chimed in again. Dr. Ellison, Kendra Scott, the vlogger, is requesting a formal interview. Her footage has passed 2.2 million views. She wants to come back and cover how we respond. Maya nodded. Tell her yes, but on one condition. She documents the reforms, not just the damage. I want the world to see the system change, not just the shame. Nathan added, we could turn this into a model for the entire hospitality industry. That's the plan, Maya said. What happened here isn't unique to this building, it's endemic. But we have the chance to lead, not by pretending it didn't happen, but by proving we're willing to fix it. She clicked to the final slide. It displayed a single sentence in bold. The future of hospitality must be rooted in equity. No slogans, no logos, just principle. The room fell quiet. Not out of fear, but awe. For the first time in perhaps a decade, the boardroom of the Halcyon felt like the place it was always meant to be. A space where leadership wasn't just strategy, but conscience. Serena tapped the table once. I vote yes. One by one, hands raised, unanimous. Then let's begin, Maya said. There will be resistance. There always is when you confront comfort. But there is no prestige in marble and chandeliers if we cannot extend dignity to every person who walks through our doors. 3:39 p.m. As the meeting adjourned, the media officer prepared the press kits. Alicia reviewed training materials for the first rollout. Nathan worked with HR to draft resignation documentation for Logan. And Maya? She stood at the window, 47 floors above the city that had once told her she didn't belong in rooms like this. Now, she didn't just belong, she led. And far below, in that same marble lobby, a subtle change had begun. A guest was greeted with respect. A concierge smiled without evaluating. And Rodriguez, the security guard who had hesitated when it mattered, had just been assigned to train others in intervention awareness. The Halcyon Regent didn't look different yet, but it had been cracked open. And through that fracture, light was starting to pour in. 4:12 p.m. The sun had begun its descent outside the Halcyon Regent, casting long shadows across the glass walls of the executive floor. Inside, the atmosphere hung between two worlds, one of reckoning and one of possibility. The emergency board session had ended, but a quieter, more intimate reckoning was still underway. In the smaller adjacent conference room, usually reserved for private investor briefings, 3 people sat in silence. Dr. Maya Ellison at the head, Nathan Cole beside her, and Logan Myers across the table, shoulders slumped, jaw clenched in the effort not to unravel completely. The once confident manager, who just hours ago barked orders from behind a marble desk, now sat like a man watching the ruins of his identity smolder around him. His name had already been stripped from the staff portal. His keycard had been deactivated. But his fate? That part still sat in Maya Ellison's hands. She regarded him not with anger, not with vengeance, but with the clinical calm of a woman who had learned over and over how to be doubted, dismissed, and then made to choose whether to destroy or to teach. Mr. Myers, she began, folding her hands neatly on the table, you made a series of decisions today that reflect not only poor judgment, but deeply embedded assumptions. You assessed me based on my appearance, not my intention. You wielded authority without accountability. And you escalated a non-incident into a viral debacle that jeopardized this entire institution's integrity. Logan's lips parted, a tremble forming in his voice. Dr. Ellison, she raised a hand. I'm not finished. He lowered his head. She continued. You did not stop when I gave you opportunities. You ignored every cue. My composure, my card, my patience, my presence. Even when you were uncertain, you doubled down. And in doing so, revealed something far more dangerous than ignorance. Arrogance fortified by assumption. Nathan glanced at Logan, then back at Maya. The tension was palpable. But then, Maya leaned back slightly, and exhaled, not with contempt, but with weight. "And yet," she said, "I believe in consequence with purpose, not spectacle, not cruelty. Purpose." Logan looked up slowly, the glimmer of hope colliding with guilt in his eyes. "You'll resign effective immediately," she said, voice level. "You will not be entitled to severance or letter of recommendation." Logan nodded, his voice hoarse. "I understand. However," she added, pausing, "I will offer you something else." His eyes met hers, confused, suspicious. "You're young," she said. "And that is not an excuse, but it is an opportunity. You have time to unlearn what led you here. So I've arranged for you to enroll in the Diversity and Inclusion Certificate Program at Morningside University. Full tuition, covered anonymously." Logan blinked. "You're sending me back to school? You need to understand the harm you've caused, not just to me, but to the values you violated, to the guests you might have dismissed without cameras watching, to the employees who mirror your behavior because they think that's what leadership looks like." His throat tightened. "Why would you, after everything I did, offer me that?" Maya's gaze softened, not in warmth, but in wisdom. "Because this isn't just about me. It's about whether the system changes or just replaces faces. If I fire you and leave you bitter, you become another cautionary tale. But if you learn, and I mean actually learn, you might become someone who breaks that cycle, somewhere else, someday." Logan wiped the corner of his eye. The tears were silent, but they were real. "I don't deserve that kind of grace." "Grace," Maya replied, "isn't about deserving. It's about choosing who we become after the damage is done." Nathan spoke for the first time. "Your resignation letter is ready. You'll sign it now, and your hotel access ends today. But your next access? That depends on how you carry what you've just been given." Logan nodded. "I will do this. I will not waste it." Maya rose. The room responded to her the way galaxies respond to gravity. She didn't need applause. She never had. She walked toward the window, watching the golden hour light pour down onto the streets below. "This building, this industry, doesn't need perfection," she said quietly. "It needs humility, and vigilance, and voices willing to challenge the script before the damage is viral." She turned back to face him. "Go. Start again. Not because I forgave you, but because you saw yourself clearly, and still asked for more." Logan stood. "Thank you, Dr. Ellison, for everything. Even the silence." He turned and left the room without another word. His future uncertain, his former ego shattered. But for the first time, he was walking out with a different posture. Not the false confidence of a man with a title, but the quiet gravity of someone finally beginning to understand who they had been, and who they might still become. As the door closed behind him, Nathan looked at Maya. "That was generous?" Maya shook her head. "That was necessary." "Do you think he'll really change?" Nathan asked. "That's not up to me," she said. "My job is to light the path. Whether he walks it is his own story." They stood in silence for a moment longer before Maya reached for her tablet again. A new slide opened. "Staff-wide meeting scheduled. 9 a.m. tomorrow." Underneath, "Ellison Protocol Implementation, Day 1. Below, in the lobby, a mother and daughter were checking in at the front desk. The concierge greeted them warmly. Without hesitation, without prejudice. It was subtle, but Maya saw it through the glass, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself a smile. By the following week, the Halcyon Regent no longer felt like the same hotel. Though the marble floors still gleamed and the chandeliers still shimmered overhead, the energy coursing through its hallways had transformed, not in spectacle, but in subtle, measurable ways. At 9 a.m. sharp, all staff members gathered in the Sapphire Ballroom, where a large screen displayed the words, "The Ellison Protocol, Day 1, Service without bias, hospitality with integrity." Rodriguez, now promoted to head of security training, stepped forward first, not in a crisp suit, but in his new uniform bearing a patch that read, "Guardian of Respect." His voice, though calm, carried the weight of quiet authority. "I've worked security for 20 years. I've seen fights break out, rooms ransacked, even celebrities thrown tantrums. But the worst thing I've ever witnessed was when someone was humiliated just for existing in a space they paid to enter. I didn't step in when I should have. That won't happen again." Staff members nodded, some with eyes glassy, others fidgeting with guilt they hadn't fully processed until that moment. Maya sat in the front row, Not on a stage, not behind a podium, but among them. She wasn't performing leadership, she was embodying it. Then came Alicia Tran, now officially designated as Interim Director of Bias Prevention. She took the mic with less trembling than expected, her voice steady, as she said, "We are not here today because of a mistake. We are here because of a pattern. And patterns don't change unless we interrupt them. That begins with how we see our guests, and how we see ourselves." That same morning, the Halcyon's software systems had undergone a sweeping upgrade. Guest service conversations at the reception desk were now quietly monitored by an AI that detected verbal patterns indicative of bias, interruptions, tone shifts, double standards in language, and sent gentle nudges to the supervisor's tablet for real-time coaching. Within hours, the first alert triggered when a staff member repeatedly asked an elderly Asian guest to repeat herself, even though her English was clear. The system flagged the interaction, and within minutes, Alicia approached the desk, asked the guest how she was feeling, and turned the awkward moment into an opportunity for connection. "She was lovely," the guest said with a smile. "No one's ever asked me that before." In another instance, a black businessman checking in was initially asked to provide additional verification, despite holding a platinum member status. The system logged the inconsistency. By evening, that front desk associate had been gently corrected and enrolled in a micro-course titled "Assumption Isn't Policy." It was part of the Ellison protocol's daily rhythm, small, sustained reminders that respect isn't just a posture, but a practice discipline. Across departments, the shift was just as visible. Housekeeping received diversity empathy training that taught them how to enter rooms with cultural sensitivity. Room service staff reviewed language bias modules. Concierge teams rehearsed scenarios that tested their response to guests from varying backgrounds, accents, dress styles, and disabilities. There were no quotas, no box-checking exercises, only moments of real reflection, facilitated by professionals who understood that changing perception requires more than scripts. But the transformation wasn't just in training rooms or algorithm dashboards. It was in the lobby. A woman in a hijab was greeted with the same enthusiasm as a man in a bespoke Italian suit. A gay couple was offered a suite upgrade without so much as a flinch. A teen checking in alone received genuine smiles instead of skeptical glances. Guests noticed. Reviews flooded in with words like warm, inclusive, attentive, respectful. A Yelp user wrote, "I didn't just feel like a customer, I felt like I mattered." Within 10 days, the hotel's satisfaction scores rose by 18%. Complaint logs dropped by 40%. And perhaps most notably, internal staff morale increased, because when people are taught to see others with dignity, they begin to feel dignified themselves. The walls of the staff hallway displayed new posters, not hollow slogans, but values in action. Diversity is not decoration, it's the foundation. You are not here to judge who belongs. You are here to prove they do. These weren't just reminders for guests, they were reflections for staff. Maya walked the halls often, never with cameras, never with entourage. She had returned not as a figurehead, but as a compass. She ate with the kitchen staff, reviewed software reports personally, and even stood in line during staff lunch to ask the simplest question: how did today feel different? And the answers came. Not perfect, but promising. I noticed I didn't jump to conclusions when a guest came in without luggage, one employee said. I actually asked questions before assuming. Another added, I realized I'd been smiling at certain guests more than others, and now I know why. I didn't mean it, but now I see it. That was the Ellison protocol in motion, not a mandate, but a mirror. Not compliance, but consciousness. And through it, the Halcyon Regent was becoming what Maya always intended it to be. Not just a place where people slept in luxury, but where they awakened to something more important than service, shared humanity. That evening, as the hotel's lights bathed the skyline in golden softness, Maya stood again in the lobby, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to feel what had changed. A young receptionist smiled at her, genuinely not performatively, and said, "Welcome, Dr. Ellison. It's an honor to have you back." Maya smiled. "It's an honor to stay." By the third week, it wasn't just the Halcyon Regent that had changed. It was the conversation across the entire hospitality industry. The ripple effect that began with a single live stream had now become a wave, reshaping norms, disrupting assumptions, and dragging long-ignored prejudices into the spotlight. Headlines filled every major news platform. not about scandal, but about reform. Words? The Ellison Protocol, one woman's blueprint to fix hospitality. After humiliation, she built a model for the future, industry-wide wake-up call triggered by one mistake. But perhaps more powerful than the media coverage were the endorsements. The American Hotel and Lodging Association released a formal statement praising the Halcyon's leadership, and within days, 3 other luxury chains, including one of Halcyon's fiercest competitors, requested consultations on how to implement similar protocols. The Ellison Protocol became more than policy. It became a symbol, an internal guide used to dismantle external bias. And Maya, though never one to chase the spotlight, found herself being invited to lead keynotes at conferences where her very identity once excluded her from the room. One of her speeches opened with a line that went viral. "I don't want to be exceptional. I want what happened to me to be impossible." In response, the Federal Hospitality Regulatory Commission began reviewing the possibility of integrating bias detection systems into their nationwide inspection criteria. For the first time in its history, the Commission cited social virality and public trust as a measure of institutional performance. At the Halcyon headquarters, requests poured in from boutique inns, airport hotels, and even international properties asking for the training modules used in the Ellison Protocol. Maya didn't hoard the knowledge. She licensed it open source, free to nonprofit or minority-owned lodging businesses. She knew the real victory wasn't in branding, but in belief. Belief that service without dignity is not service at all. Meanwhile, her staff blossomed. Rodriguez, once a quiet guard with a good heart, was now conducting regional workshops on how to recognize microaggressions and intervene constructively. Alicia Tran's probationary role became permanent, and she was named Regional Director of Bias Prevention and Staff Culture, overseeing 27 properties across the U.S. and Canada. She conducted interviews on morning shows, not as someone who had once failed, but as someone who had learned, adapted, and risen. She said in one televised segment, "The incident almost ended my career, but it also gave me the chance to become the kind of leader I had always admired from afar." The hotel's digital platforms told their own story. A 33% increase in bookings among guests identifying as part of historically marginalized groups, a 40% uptick in guest satisfaction surveys using words like welcomed, safe, and understood. On LinkedIn, hospitality professionals began listing trained under Ellison Protocol as a career asset. And, perhaps most telling of all, guests stopped noticing the chandeliers and started noticing the people. Staff began receiving thank you notes, not for room upgrades or turned-down chocolates, but for the feeling of being seen. One mother wrote, "Your staff treated my autistic son like a human being, not an inconvenience. That's not common. That's rare. And it means the world." Maya read everyone. She didn't just lead the reform, she lived it. She walked the back hallways of regional properties unannounced, just as she had done at the Regent. And while some still failed to recognize her, most now welcomed her with the same line she had once been denied. "It's an honor to have you here." But Maya didn't let praise cloud purpose. In every city she visited, she met with the cleaning staff, the night receptionists, the kitchen teams, not just to thank them, but to ask them, "What are we still getting wrong?" And they told her, sometimes with trembling honesty, about inconsistent pay, about language barriers, about how hard it still was to speak up. So she kept writing, kept tweaking, kept listening. The Ellison Protocol evolved in real time, shaped by those it aimed to protect. In the heart of all this, Kendra Scott, the vlogger whose live stream started it all, released a follow-up video titled "How a Mistake Became a Movement." It gained over 5 million views. In it, she toured the Halcyon Regent with Maya, not to recreate drama, but to document progress. She ended the video saying, "This isn't a story about revenge, it's about repair. About what happens when a black woman isn't just heard, but heeded." The comments flooded with testimonials from around the globe, former guests who had been profiled elsewhere, employees who had been silenced for speaking up, even industry leaders admitting publicly that their hotels had failed to meet this standard. And amid it all, Maya never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her work spoke in systems. Her justice whispered in spreadsheets and slid into policy handbooks and trickled into performance reviews. 1 year after the incident, the Halcyon Regent hosted the first ever Global Hospitality Equity Summit with Maya as keynote. At the entrance stood a wall-sized print of the now iconic moment. Maya standing calm in the center of the lobby, security looming, Logan pointing. The caption beneath it read, "Everything changed the moment she didn't." That evening, as Maya stood once more beneath the same chandelier that had once watched her be dismissed, she raised a glass, not in celebration, but in continuation. Because she knew reform is not a finish line, it's a path you sweep every day. And tonight, the floor was cleaner than ever. 9 months had passed since Logan Myers walked out of the Halcyon Regent with his title revoked, his reputation in shambles, and the echo of Dr. Maya Ellison's words still lodged in the back of his throat, like a truth too large to swallow. He hadn't returned home to his parents in Virginia. He didn't post vague reflections online or try to rebrand himself as a victim of cancel culture. He disappeared deliberately into something far more difficult: silence, study, and self-confrontation. At Morningside University, he enrolled under a temporary name to avoid attention and took night classes in bias and identity studies. He sat in rooms filled with people who had lived the consequences of what he had once enabled: people of color, immigrants, LGBTQ+ voices, and hospitality workers who had been quietly pushed to the margins for years. For the first few weeks, Logan barely spoke. He listened and kept listening. He wrote a paper titled, "I Was the Gatekeeper, I Never Knew I Held the Keys." His professors noticed something rare, not performative guilt, but enduring discomfort, the kind that doesn't ask to be forgiven, but insists on being educated. In his third month, he volunteered at a local homeless shelter's intake desk. He carried towels, cleaned floors, and greeted guests without assumption. One night, a man walked in with a thick accent and no ID. The younger Logan might have asked for credentials or called security, but this time, he offered a hot drink and said, "Welcome, you matter." And it wasn't a script, it was real. Meanwhile, the world continued to orbit the Ellison protocol. As it spread from hotels to airlines to corporate training manuals, Logan read every headline not with bitterness, but with resolve. He saw Alicia Tran speak at a leadership forum and sent her a handwritten letter, no return address, thanking her for continuing the work he failed to start. He never heard back. He didn't expect to. He applied for dozens of jobs under his real name and was turned down every time. The internet never forgets, after all. The video of him pointing at Maya in the Halcyon lobby still circulated, used in workshops as a case study in unconscious bias. He knew that image would follow him forever. But he didn't run from it. He kept learning. And when no one hired him, he created something of his own, a digital resource library called Reframe Hospitality, a free online platform offering training videos, reflective prompts, and guest-sourced feedback models for small hotels and motels that couldn't afford high-end consultancy. It didn't go viral, it wasn't fancy, but it was steady, quietly downloaded in India, in Nairobi, in small towns in Alabama. People wrote in, "We use this for our front desk team. Your video helped my staff talk about race without fear." Still, Logan never mentioned who he was or where he came from. Until one day, 10 months after that marble floor confrontation, he received an anonymous invitation. A blank envelope, no signature. Inside, a single ticket to the Global Hospitality Equity Summit. Back at the Halcyon Regent. At first, he hesitated. Then he remembered Maya's words. Grace isn't about deserving, it's about choosing who we become after the damage is done. And so, he returned. Not to reclaim, but to witness. The lobby felt warmer, quieter. A plaque beside the check-in desk read, "We see you, we serve you, as you are." No one recognized him. The staff treated him with kindness, not protocol. During a breakout session titled Redemption in Reform, Logan raised his hand for the first time in almost a year and said softly, "I was part of the problem. I'm trying to become part of the solution." Afterward, someone approached him, a young black front desk agent who had once worked under his leadership. She didn't shout, didn't scoff. She just said, "I'm glad you came back to learn." That night, Logan sat in the back of the ballroom as Maya took the stage. She didn't mention him. She didn't need to. But her closing words felt aimed at him anyway. True transformation doesn't just change systems. It changes hearts. It makes space for people to re-enter as better versions of who they were. And that space, if we're doing this right, must remain open. As the crowd rose in applause, Logan remained seated, eyes wet, hands still. Not clapping, not seeking. Just grateful to be allowed in the room. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a gatekeeper. He felt like a student. And for Logan Myers, that was the most powerful title he had ever carried. Exactly 1 year to the day since she had been asked to leave her own hotel, Dr. Maya Ellison stood once again beneath the chandelier in the Halcyon Regent's marble lobby. Not as a returning guest, not as the humiliated woman once surrounded by cameras and suspicion, but as the architect of an industry-wide awakening. The lobby was filled now with soft music, quiet laughter, and voices speaking over coffee and collaboration. But it was also filled with meaning. That day marked the first International Hospitality Equity Day, a new initiative led jointly by the World Travel Federation and the United Nations Tourism Council, both of which credited the inception of the movement to a single moment of dignity under pressure and to the woman who had turned pain into policy. The Ellison Protocol had grown far beyond Maya's original vision. It had become not only a model, but a benchmark, a competitive edge, a moral imperative. Within 12 months, 63 hotel chains across 18 countries had adopted the full training suite. Airlines followed, cruise lines joined, restaurants and travel platforms integrated pieces of the bias detection AI into their customer feedback loops. And universities began teaching the Halcyon Incident in business ethics, DEI programs, and case study seminars. Maya herself had been awarded the Global Impact Medal from the World Economic Forum, the Eleanor Roosevelt Humanitarian Honor for Systemic Reform, and a doctorate honoris causa from the London School of Hospitality Leadership. But she had accepted them all with her trademark poise and quiet resistance to self-glorification. "This isn't my legacy," she said at the UN summit. "This is just the proof that when people stop looking away, systems begin to shift." She redirected all prize money, nearly $4, $5 million, into the Service with Integrity Fund, a global grant that supported minority-owned hospitality startups in underserved regions. At the Halcyon Regent itself, every corner now told a different story. A wall-length installation titled Faces of Welcome featured portraits and testimonies from staff and guests across the globe, each one describing a time they'd felt invisible and what it meant to finally be seen. The staff orientation packet began not with company policies, but with a letter from Maya that read, "This hotel is not built of stone and glass. It is built of care, of courage, of daily choices to make everyone feel they belong. You are not just hired to serve, you are here to help people feel human." Employees read it aloud in multiple languages at every new hire induction. Alicia Tran, now the global director of bias reform for Halcyon International, had trained over 1,200 managers across 6 continents. She had personally reviewed over 400 flagged incidents, most of which were resolved through conversation, education, and emotional intelligence, not punishment. Her message was clear: accountability without humiliation, progress without shame. "You don't grow compliance," she often said. "You grow culture." Rodriguez, the once silent security guard, now led keynote sessions at hospitality conferences, teaching intervention strategies that balance safety and respect. "You don't need a badge to protect someone," he said. "Sometimes you just need to pause before you react." And Logan Myers, he didn't work for the Halcyon anymore. But his story had become part of the training material, a raw, painful, redemptive thread in a larger tapestry of change. His nonprofit, Reframe Hospitality, had partnered with several community colleges to offer entry-level workers free certification in cultural competency. His mistakes had become his method, and he never used Maya's name to build his second chance. She had already given him all he needed, the space to change, and the truth that demanded it. As for Maya, she never moved back into the spotlight. She declined television specials, ghosted interview requests, and only appeared when the work, not the press, required her presence. She often said, "The loudest change is the kind that makes itself unnecessary." But every now and then, she returned to the Regent, quietly, unannounced, and without fail, someone would recognize her. Not from the live stream, not from the headlines, but from the way people around her subtly changed posture when she entered the room. They stood straighter, smiled fuller, served with attention instead of assumption. And that, more than any award, was what legacy looked like. Not a statue, not a speech, but a space that stays better after you've left it. On the anniversary evening, as golden light flooded through the tall windows and champagne flutes clinked over shared stories of reform, Maya stepped out onto the balcony of the executive floor, watching the city below. She thought of the day it began, how she had counted down 2 minutes, not with rage, but with resolve. She thought of the marble floor where she'd been dismissed, and how it now displayed a plaque that read, "Sometimes change walks in quietly, waits patiently, and leaves a revolution behind." She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the night air. Somewhere inside the hotel, a new receptionist was greeting a first-time guest with an accent and no reservation. She didn't know Maya was there. She didn't need to. She said, "Welcome to the Halcyon Regent. We're honored to have you." Maya smiled, not because she was recognized, but because the system finally was dot. The anniversary evening wound down with soft music echoing through the halls of the Halcyon Regent. Conversations drifted into quiet reflection, and the crowd that had once gathered in awe began to dissipate, unaware that the woman who had unknowingly triggered a global shift was preparing to leave without a farewell. Dr. Maya Ellison stood once more in the very spot where it all began, beneath the chandelier that had watched her be misunderstood, underestimated, and almost erased. But tonight, no one was filming her. No one was defending her. No one needed to. The world had already heard her story, not through interviews or speeches, but through the way lobbies now welcome differently, through the way front desks pause before assuming, and through the way power was no longer assumed to come in one form. And now, just like she had done that first day, she walked toward the exit alone. No escort, no press, no announcement, only a quiet breeze brushing the hem of her navy coat and the soft whisper of her heels against the tile. The concierge looked up and recognized her, not from headlines, but from history. He nodded respectfully. She smiled, nodded back. That was enough. As the revolving door turned and released her into the cool night, Maya paused for just a moment. She looked up at the glass facade that now bore a permanent inscription across the upper ledge. "Service is not about who enters. It's about how we receive them." She placed a hand against the door's brass bar, not to hold on, but to thank it. A doorman opened it gently for her, not because of her title, but because that was now the culture. As she stepped into the city's rhythm, she did not look back. The hotel remained behind her, lit, alive, and completely self-sustaining in its new integrity. The system no longer required her presence to do what was right, and that, to her, was the only ending she ever wanted. Not applause, not headlines, not legacy carved in marble, just progress, humming quietly behind her, steady as breath. And somewhere in the distance, someone new walked into a space that once judged people like them, and was instead told with a full-hearted smile, "Welcome in." That was her voice now, spoken by many, remembered by few, but felt by all. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand attention. She simply stood her ground. And the world moved around her. Dr. Maya Ellison didn't seek revenge. She built reform. She didn't burn the system down. She rewired it, policy by policy, human by human, lobby by lobby. What started as humiliation became a movement. What began as a mistake became a model, and what they tried to erase became a blueprint for how to do better. This is the power of quiet strength, of dignity, of proving them wrong not with anger, but with excellence. Because sometimes the loudest response is the one that changes everything.